if you have a dream of owning a private property, be it as your first purchase, investment, or HDB upgrading, can you afford to wait? Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Sherwin, and today in this video I'll talk about something interesting, a report which I read recently before I went on my holiday from DBS. The report highlights that home prices might be hitting 4,000 PSF by 2040, which is quite an alarming headline, right? So in this video today, I will deep dive into this report, and what I'll be going through is I will briefly give a summary on this report, and after that I'll analyze the pillars which DBS think will drive our property price forward to hitting the 4,000 PSF mark. And lastly will be the golden question is, if you have a dream of owning a private property, be it as your first purchase, investment, or HDB upgrading, can you afford to wait? Okay, so without further 废话, let's dive in. Okay, so this is the DBS prediction, but this report is not uncommon. In 2017, right, which is over here, Morgan Stanley have actually predicted that our property price will double and hit 3,000 PSF by 2030. Okay, just for context, we are in 2025 now, end of 2025, moving on to 2026. So let's look at the OCR sector. Since the report was being released in 2017, right, okay, the prices from 1,300 PSF appreciated to 2,244 PSF in 2024. Of course, 2025 haven't fully ended yet lah. So I just take 2024 as an example, but 2025 the prices appreciated as well. But as you can see, right, since the report was being released, right, the prices in OCR actually appreciated by almost 70%, and we still have a good 5 years to go to 2030. So hitting 3,000 PSF might not be that far off. We will know that the land bid is getting increasingly higher. So this is just for the OCR portion. What about RCR? Since report was being released in 2017, 1,600 PSF. 2014, it appreciated to close to 2,007 PSF, which is about a 60% increase. So with another 5 years to go, we expect that the price will exceed Morgan Stanley prediction, which will hit around 3,315 PSF. Okay, then next will be CCR. CCR 2017 average PSF started from 2,200 PSF all the way right now, as of today, right, it's already at 3,001 PSF on average. And if you look at some of the new launches, they are already hitting 3,003 to 3,005 PSF. So Morgan Stanley estimate is still quite safe estimate, because our property market, right, has already outperformed whatever Morgan Stanley is predicting. And Morgan Stanley prediction is in 2030, not 2025. Where we are at now for certain areas, CCR and RCR areas, we are already crossed the 3,000 PSF mark, like the recent Paya launch, Zion Grand, and River Green. RCR all already crossed 3,000 PSF. Okay, so DBS came out with this new report where they estimate once again prices will reach 4,000 PSF by 2040. Okay, the question here is, which everyone is asking, what will cause the price? Okay, what are the driving forces that cause the price to grow even further to 4,000 PSF? And secondly, sustainable. Are they just speculators with no holding powers and stuff like this? And DBS report actually answers all these pointers. Okay, so these are the growth pillars which DBS highlights. Of course, there are many other factors, but these are the major one. The first one is Singapore population growth. Second is our economic strength and rising income. And thirdly would be our stable government and smart policies, of course, by the government again. So population growth in terms of Singaporeans and permanent residents have been on a steady rise. And as of this year, I believe Singapore population is around 6.11 million. Okay, so if you look at our old age support ratio From 1990, the ratio is 10.5. 10 years later is 7.4, and then 10 years later is 4.3, and as of 2025 is 3.3. So the drop is very alarming. What contributes to the population growth is because of a smaller household as well. And lastly would be the HDB upgraders. So if you just look at some numbers over here throughout the years, right, our resident population consists of Singaporeans and permanent residents, actually grow from 3.9 million all the way to 4.2 million. Of course, there's a slight dip over here because of COVID, and you have some PR giving up their PR residency and returning to their home country or whatsoever. But COVID is over, the number actually spiked back up quite drastically. So it used to be a stable growth of around 1%, but since COVID, people start coming in more aggressively. Our government start to open up to immigrants, so it's like 3.5%, 5% growth. And in recent years, they start to bring down by a bit lah. But this is one of the main contributing factors for population growth and for the prices going higher. And the other thing is the household size. Nowadays, more and more young couples or HDB upgraders, okay, they are preferring to stay in a private property if they can afford, even if it means a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom. Why so? Because our household size, right, is declining, not just for the smaller unit type, even for the landed property. So if you look at the average household size over here, right, all these data are from SingStats. So if you want to verify or cross-check, you can go to SingStats. These are the numbers. So what does this mean? Last time, if you have smaller population but the household size is bigger, you don't need that much housing. Now, even though you have a huge population but the household size is getting smaller and smaller, this in turn leads to more demand for a limited supply in Singapore. As you all know, Singapore have limited land as well lah. Okay, and with all the newspaper articles, which leads to the fourth point, right, it's more and more HDB upgraders are making the leap to private property. But you can see that the preference for staying in a private property, if younger couples can, they would go for that choice. Even if it's a 2-bed 2-bath or a 2-bed 1-bath or a compact 3-bedroom, which is very popular in today's market. So don't be surprised in the future the property gets smaller and smaller. People still do not mind. Okay, so the next pillar of growth will be the economic strength and rising income. This is broken down into two portions. One is our asset versus debt ratio to show how rich or how strong is Singaporeans' holding power, and secondly is the increase in median household income. If we were to look at it over here, this graph is from SingStat as well. So if you want to cross-check, you can go to cross-check. You can see that our household net worth, right, is growing on a year-by-year basis for the past 5 years, ever since COVID. How do they calculate household net worth? Is by your household asset minus your liability. So from this chart here, right, it is very obvious, right, that our household asset, right, is growing while our liabilities, right, remain rather constant. Okay, so Singaporeans' holding power is very, very, very strong. That is why, right, for all the new launches for the past year 2024, 2025, as long as they are in a good location and they are fairly priced, it would almost be sold out. Next would be our household income. Real median household income has been on the rise again. And if you look at the stats again from SingStats, right, our household income, right, is also on the rise. So all these are contributing factors which DBS used to extrapolate, right, that prices will be supported by the strong demand, strong holding power of Singaporeans, strong purchasing power of Singaporeans, that will push the price to 4,000 PSF by 2040. Okay, the third driving pillar, right, which is mentioned in DBS reports, would be our stable government and their policies. A stable government, it's very important because it gives confidence not just for investors but for Singaporeans as well, to invest and buy in Singapore property. If you look at the percentage of people buying property, right, it's actually not so much from foreign investors or whoever lah. It's more of the local demand. Okay, and secondly is the sound policies which was implemented by our government. And mind you, it's not just one policy. It's multiple policies, and they are all cooling measures to make sure that firstly, Singaporeans do not over leverage, and secondly, there's no bubble forming. So in Singapore, it's so hard to buy a property as compared to any other countries out there. What DBS report talk about, right, is not something new. It is something that has already been going on for the longest time. And if you look at all the past report, right, we are always talking about the same thing, at least for the past 10 to 15 years, as to what drive property growth. The first is there's very limited land supply in Singapore. Singapore is only this big, okay? Things will only get more expensive, especially if it is a limited resources. Secondly, because of the growing demand by population growth. If you look at the population growth and property price growth since 2000 all the way till now, every time the population growth, property will grow as well. So there is a correlation there, okay? And thirdly, it's because our income growth as well. Singaporeans are getting richer, maybe not by a lot, but our median income is increasing on a steady basis. So a fun fact, in the past, our government used to peg our property growth to GDP growth. But in recent years, right, they came to realize that affordability makes more sense, right, if they control housing prices pegged to income growth. So they want to make sure, right, property price do not outpace income growth. So at least, right, it will still be affordable for Singaporeans. Of course, this applies to HDB and private property. For those top 20% earner, okay, I'm not talking about 80%. For the 20%, if they want to buy a 2 million property, 2.5 million property, it's still within their comfortable range. The last part of this video, to sum it all up, is can you afford to wait? Okay, every time a new cooling measure come out, right, your purchasing power will get smaller and smaller. And what is the impact on your purchasing power? So if you look, property value, if it's at 1 million, before 2010, your down payment is only 100,000. You can afford to loan 900,000. Okay, this is before 2010. 2010, cooling measure came out, your down payment have increased by 100,000. Okay, so purchasing power reduced. 2018, down payment increased again, loan amount decreased. Next is how much the bank is willing to loan you. Before 2010, you earn $6,000. You can borrow up to the loan to value limit, which is 90%. 2013, ever since they introduced TDSR, stress test rate at 3.5%, income of 6,000, you can borrow 800,000. Still comfortable, because as long as you have 200,000 cash, you can buy a $1 million property. But 2021, TDSR reduced. Okay, you can loan lesser already. Stress test rate still the same. So instead of borrowing 800,000, now you can only borrow 734,000. What does this mean? Means on top of the 250,000 down payment, you have to top up another $70,000 in cash or CPF. And 2022, what happened again? They reduced your loan affordability. Stress test rate increased to 4%. I think as of now it's 4.5%, which is even lower. Okay, from 734,000, it become 694,000. So all the way from here to here, the difference is around 100,000. Means your down payment, instead of 250,000 for the same $1 million property, you need to come up with another 100,000, which is 350,000. This is not including your stamp duty. Of course, over the years, our stamp duty also gradually increased bit by bit. Okay? So if you can see, your purchasing power reduce every time there is a cooling measure. Okay? Secondly, you are fighting a race against time. assuming today you can take max loan, you are 35 years old. Every year you wait, okay? Every year you wait. Your income, if you're earning 16,000, will drop from 2.45 million to 2.41 million to 2.369 million to 2.322 million, okay? Just a guideline. This is based on assumption you have no credit card debt, you have no car loan, and whatsoever, okay? But what's the issue here? The first issue is nobody age backwards, meaning you will grow older and older as the year pass, okay? When you grow older, firstly, your loan affordability drop, okay? Secondly is you have to ensure that your income stay the same at 16,000. Most of the HDB upgraders, what age do they fall at? They fall at the 40 years old to 45 years old age. Okay, now if you are 45 years old, do you think you will still have an increment in your income next year? Okay, or the following year? If no increment, at least maintain the same. But even if you maintain the same, your loan affordability, right, will drop already. Will definitely drop already. And this is if your household combined income is $16,000. Okay, so your purchasing power, right, in the long run, right, will only get lesser and lesser. Now let's talk about the seller holding power. In my previous slides earlier on, I actually showcased the selling holding power in terms of our household balance sheet. But let me show you a different perspective. This is our liquid assets, meaning currency and deposit, versus mortgage loan. Okay, from this, right, you would know that we are not over leveraging. One simple case which you can see, and an example which I always use to tell my clients, look at what is happening around the world. The worst part was COVID, right? There was a shutdown, right? But did our property price dip? Okay, you have to understand what caused price to reduce. Okay, fundamentally, people always thought, there's a war, price will reduce, there's tariff, price will reduce, there's COVID, price will reduce. No, all this will not cause price to reduce. Price will only reduce, right, if the seller, right, cannot afford to pay for mortgage anymore. Okay, as long as you understand this point, you will realize, right, why Singapore property price, right, never drop throughout the years, right, no matter what is happening in the world. Okay, because our liquid assets versus mortgage loan, right, the difference is so huge. So Singaporeans homeowner, right, their holding power is very, very, very strong. Okay, this is something you would have to get. So the point here which I would like to end off with for all my clients out there, whether they're always having this debate, they are trying to time the market to enter, next year will be cheaper, next year will be cheaper. But fundamentally, it will go down to this viewpoint. Firstly, is the price supported? Secondly, do Singaporeans or homeowners or developers have the power to continue holding their property at market price, so they don't need to slash price to sell? Even if you go bank auction nowadays, the fire sale, the bank is still selling at fair market value. They're not going lelong selling like $500,000, $1 million below the fair market value. Okay, and lastly, always do remember, housing supply is very, very limited. And who control the housing supply in Singapore? Singapore government. And do you think they will sell way cheaper than the 2025 prices when people are already accepting 2005 PSF for RCR property, 3000 PSF for CCR property? They wouldn't. They will just let the land price inch up bit by bit. So to end off this video, hopefully it gives you clarity into why DBS, such a reputable bank, come up with this report, and how Singapore property prices are being supported and why the price will continue to rise. Okay, then again, if you want to take action but don't know what product to buy, I do have a lot of new launch review in my channel as well. If not, you can reach out to me privately to discuss your objective. But I'll end off my video today and hope you like the video, and do remember to like, share and subscribe.